It's my honor to bring up a mentor of mine and some others. So Jonathan Schultz.
Thanks. I want to start by reading a passage from Luke. And the nice thing about this one is we get a little insight in Matthew and Mark, but Luke, being the doctor, he's very detailed. He gives us a lot of detail on this particular passage, which is really when Jesus calls Peter and Andrew and the sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder, to follow him. But in Luke, it's pretty detailed, and I think it's pretty, applicable to what we're doing here. So in verse 4 of chapter 5, I believe, he says, when he had finished speaking, Jesus, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Put out into deep water. So they've already been fishing all night, and they're asked to do this. Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night, and I haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man." Now, what does that have to do with being a committee chair, being an area director, functioning together in the context of committee? I think it has a lot to do with what we're called to in the context of committee work. And in your packet, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because in some ways I'm going to do something that could be considered blasphemous, okay? This is in your packet, and as far as this goes, this is great as far as the roles that are spelled out, okay? I think it's a wonderful snapshot. I think it's something that you could take and you could apply in your area of work with your area director and your committee, and you could fill those seats. But I would like, and I do recognize that this comes from Tim Collins' Good to Great. Okay, so it comes out of a great book. I think Enron was in that book, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay. But other than that, okay, it's a good book. I mean, it's good principles. I'm not throwing the book under the bus or anything. Okay, I am saying it's a great principle. It has its place. However, I think there's a huge problem with this picture. Are we filling up a bus, or are we filling a fishing boat? When we think about being committee chair people and area directors working together, what is the picture that resonates more with you? Okay? And what I'm getting at is Jesus calls Peter and Andrew and the sons of Zebedee, and they're fishermen, and they're out doing their thing, and they've had a rough night, and he says, throw the nets out on the other side. They put them out, right? They have a catch that's so big, what happens? Okay, it's miraculous, right? Because they're following the Lord's lead. But what happens? The nets begin to break. How do they actually get the nets in?
Partner boats.
They have partner boats, right? So there's actually other people that have to come with their boats. They fill both boats to the point of almost sinking, so that it's that big a catch because it's a community kind of an enterprise, and it's driven by the Lord. I mean, it's very much, I think the analogy would be it's soaked in prayer. It's in stride with the Holy Spirit. There's a sense of listening together and saying, we've already done this. Well, do it again. Okay, we're going to obey you. And then miracles happen in the context of that. But there's a lot in that passage that applies to our committees and to the work that we're doing within Young Life. So, is this what we're called to in committee chair and area director work, leading committees, moving an area forward? Is it more like Miss Frizzle in the Magic School Bus? Okay, what do you picture there? She's awesome. She's fun. I mean, I remember my kids watching that, and I watched it too, Arthur and all those. And or is it more like Deadliest Catch? And I think that's why when I see the bus, I have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with the book. I don't have a problem with the concept. I don't have a problem with taking it and looking at roles and putting people in seats. But I think there's a couple problems with this. Number one is I don't think it catches the heart of what Jesus was calling Andrew and Peter to. That he said, go out to deep water, right? And when you're in deep water, it's pretty dangerous and it's pretty scary, but that's where the big fish are, right? And that's where the schools of fish tend to be. And so this is actually dangerous work. what you're called to, what I'm called to, what area directors are called to, what leaders are called to, this is all very dangerous work. It's deep water. And there's not a lot of people that are willing to go out into that water. There's a lot of people that stay closer to the shore, right? But when you go to a school that nobody else is willing to go to, or you enter into the world of a kid with disabilities or a teenage mom, you're going out into deep water. And it can be very dangerous, even deadly. It's very scary, it's very overwhelming. But there are some pretty tremendous miracles that can happen as you're working in faith in the context of that. So that's one reason why, I just have to start by asking the question, are we talking about, Miss Frizzle and the Magic School Bus, and filling the bus, or are we talking about the deadliest catch? And are we talking about filling a fishing boat? Now here's the other thing that I have a problem with, and don't hear me wrong, because I'll probably get fired if this goes back or something, but because I'm not on like some committee task force or anything, but the reality is, the seats on a bus, who's the only one doing anything?
Driver.
Who's the driver on this bus?
I am.
That's right. Hans is the only one doing anything on his bus. No, we know that's not true, right? There's a problem with this picture if we dwell on it too long. This analogy, this metaphor, it just doesn't work for what we're trying to accomplish. And that's why I go back to the deadliest catch or a fishing boat. Because anybody here ever fished in Alaska? Okay, so this is probably resonating with you, and you could probably do this way better than I could do it, because I've never worked on a fishing boat. But I have watched the shows, and I do know people in high school that went up every summer, because their dads owned fishing boats, and they were a part of that. And I know that there isn't one position on a fishing boat that doesn't have a purpose. That there's no wasted space. And that every one of them is somewhat dangerous and very important to the overall accomplishment and the goal. And the goal is to catch a lot of fish or to get a lot of crab or whatever you're fishing or crabbing for. Okay, so the reality is, I think in my mind's eye, because I often think in pictures and metaphors and all that, for me that's better than the bus. And I think if I had the time, the ability, I might actually create the fishing boat or the crabbing boat and say, okay, here are the roles we need to fish or fill. But then again, I might even want to push that limit a little further and say, is this possibly a little bit more like the Dunkirk rescue? That there's a lot of boats, and there's a lot of roles in the context of those boats. But what we're talking about right now is we're talking about that area boat, okay? And I don't know what those boats could be. I mean, quite honestly, as a mission, we run the risk of being arrogant and saying that, our boat is bigger and better than some other organization or some other church. We just don't need to go there. The reality is we're all trying to rescue kids, and so I think for me, it's a better place to start, to think about the deadliest catch, to think about what is Jesus calling Peter and Andrew to, and what did they sacrifice, and what does it mean to be called to deep water, and are we able to do that alone? Can you really go fish a commercial fishing boat with a couple people? No. You couldn't probably get one pot out of the water. It would be very, very difficult to do that. So I just wanted to start with that metaphor as we move forward, because I don't believe that the area director is sitting passively in the driver's seat. I don't think any of us want that to be the case, or that the area director is the only one, doing something, that everybody else is sitting passively along for the ride, looking out the windows at the view. That's not a real description of what we're doing on committee. And it wouldn't be healthy, obviously, if that was the case. And I don't think we're called to fishing like this, single line. I love what Jesus does, because what that is it's a net, and it's a community way to fish. It requires lots of people working together, and when there is that big catch, everybody is a part of pulling that together, pulling that out. Everybody is sacrificing, even to the point of a boat sinking, and everybody is celebrating and overwhelmed and in awe and growing in their faith. So there really is, in that passage, there's just this great sense of calling and danger and deep water and celebration and miracles that are happening there. So I just really love the passage when I think about what we're doing as a committee. So I start there because part of being willing to go out into the deep water is being convinced that it's worth it. You know, that we actually have to know that Jesus is calling us, and we have to believe with all our heart that those fish, you know, need to be caught. You know, that we need to get out there into the deep water. And every analogy breaks down, so I'll stop there. And so I think for all of us and for our committee folks, we can think about that as well. You know, that there are comments, as we wrote down, there were comments about time, there were comments about passion. You know, are people as passionate? Well, I mean, I can't answer that. I mean, but the reality is that's what causes people to go into the deep water of committee work and of being a volunteer leader and of sacrificially giving. That they're absolutely convinced that this is the most important thing, and that their Creator, their God, is saying, go. You know, and so how do we instill that in other people? You know, maybe that passage could be helpful. You know, just to have a conversation about how that might apply. So we're fishing in community. We're not fishing in a single line. So we need people to help, right? So it's a community effort, and that's a lot of what we've been talking about. When I was looking at what was coming in from the surveys, a couple of things that really stuck out at me were time and passion. And I think that oftentimes an issue of time can be solved by having more people and having more roles and not having a few people do a lot of work. Obviously, it's not that complicated. And then I think the passion issue is sometimes we have to, and we're going to talk about this, we have to get people in front of the ministry. We have to get people's hearts connected, not just their heads. And even discussing scriptures and having conversations about, you know, the deep water of Young Life work and reaching kids can be something that instills passion. But I think story rules, personally. There's nothing, in my opinion, that won't build passion more, other than just being on the front lines, being with kids, being at camp, being in a place where it's happening. Stories rule.